Saying that the Mega Drive has a lot of shmups is certainly something which cannot be denied. Cannot be denied at all. But for the countless releases which took great advantage of the capabilities, for the most part they tended to cluster into the classic split between those which scrolled horizontally and those which scrolled vertically. But between this classic scrolling shmup schism, there were plenty more which did things differently. One of those being Granada. This is Beyond the Scanlines, a series focusing on interesting games on classic computing and gaming platforms. Granada was developed by Wolf Team with a 1990 release, originally for the X68000, with a Mega Drive one following not too far later. Though only officially released in both the US and Japan, it was one of those where there was an official import release for Europe handled through Ubisoft, or at least planned for. It's the far-off year of 2016, one where nuclear weapons have been banned and battles are fought using powerful mobile weapon platforms, such as the titular Granada, a platform which is now in the command of one Leon Todo. Leon acquired it after undertaking a job given to him by a mysterious agent. And now Leon is ready for action, in a mission which takes you across 9 stages, slowly dismantling the enemy forces. Each stage requires you to take out a specific group of targets, indicated on your radar, ranging from smaller generators to the engines of an aerial battleship and lots of enemy cannons and other weapon platforms. The final target in each stage isn't just another one of these, but instead you'll face a more powerful weapons platform or an installation. These don't go down easily, requiring some tactical trickery to line up to punch through their weak spot in order to take them out. Some of them are even built up from multiple components, and each of these needs to be taken out in turn before you can get a shot at taking out the core. In most cases, they offer enough challenge and aren't too fiddly to dismantle, except for that at the end of stage 4. Getting the right angle for the bank shots can be fiddly here, and what's worse is that you're against the clock. Each stage requires you to take all the targets out before this time runs out, and whilst it's generous enough on the lower difficulty levels, things do start to get tight on those higher ones. So learning both the target locations and the quickest route through the stage is really the key to making sure you've got more than enough time to take everything out and be successful. I generally dig here how each of these 9 stages greatly mixes things up while still relying upon the core set of mechanics. It truly gets you excited for what comes up next, whether it's navigating city streets, to a fight aboard an aerial battleship, and beyond. There are plenty of surprises in store. Other stages in fact have you navigating roads high above a city, or making your way through a canyon late at night. You'll also be navigating around a river system where the current can drag you off course if you're not ready for it. Then there's the obligatory lava stage, one in which an unwary pilot can collect quite a lot of damage quickly if they are not careful. When it comes to dismantling the enemy forces, you have quite an arsenal to hand. Granada's primary weapon is a rapid-fire cannon. It offers a solid range, even though individual shots don't do a lot of damage, especially to bigger targets. That's where the blaster comes in. A single blast from this is 16 times as powerful as your cannon, so it can easily wipe out smaller enemies in a single blast. In fact, it's so powerful that using it will actually push you back from the recoil. Now, as powerful as both of those are, they aren't all you've got access to. Within each of the stages, you'll find collectible support units, and these offer a variety of upgrades. The most iconic of these is the Reflector, an orbiting drone which tracks enemies firing in their direction. There's also a variety of long-range weapons like the Chrome Lek, which intercepts enemies as you fire your blaster, plus the Epaulet missile launchers, which when fully upgraded can rain plenty of long-range missiles upon unsuspecting foes. Unlike many shooters, however, these aren't permanent. When you move to the next stage, all installed support units will be lost. It may sound harsh, but with each stage offering a fixed set of them to find, it means that the levels can be crafted around what you have available, and it also means you can't stick with a single unit type and power your way through the game. Now, having all these options to hand is for naught if you can't really survive long enough to deploy them into battle. Thankfully, you are defended by a powerful shielding system, which can take plenty of hits before you'll bite the dust and lose one of your lives. The strength of this shielding depends on your difficulty level, which reduces as you increase that difficulty. One downside though is you can't replenish it, so you really want to master the controls to be able to dodge enemy fire and keep yourself unscathed as long as possible. Speaking of the controls, it's really one of the more unique aspects to Granada's mechanics. You'll use the directional pad to navigate the map, and by default the A button is used to fire your cannons, and the C button, that will fire your blaster. As for the B button, when you hold this down, you'll be locked in the direction you're currently facing, and so can infect strafe around the playfield, locking onto enemy targets with ease. Depending on your preferences, this is something which can be remapped prior to starting the game. It's something I tend to do, especially when using a controller like 8BitDo's venerable M30, because with the C button duplicated onto the shoulder button, there's a bit less finger twisting to be an effective pilot and easily strafe and alternate your weapons usage. As an early Mega Drive release, Granada certainly doesn't push the hardware to the extent that many later games do. It's certainly no Thunder Force 4 on that regard, but its pacing is solid and the visuals use the palette quite well. In fact, the world of Granada is quite a grimy, grim place, and the palette used really shows this off across those levels. While the visuals fit well for an earlier release on the platform, it's a whole other story when it comes to the soundtrack. It's up there with some very, very memorable pieces to listen to. From the moody tones of the intro, particularly in its opening bars, to the variety of pieces played across each of the levels. It works great as a tense soundtrack for a dangerous set of missions, especially as you reach the bosses where each level's individual theme fades out for a boss-specific one. It may not be up there with some of the all-time classics on the platform, but it does work really well. As do the game's sound effects. Well, most of them anyway. As after a good session or two of play, that beeping for when your shields get critical can really start to get on one's nerves. Even then, if an alert tone is annoying to hear, then I guess you could consider it. Perhaps it's doing its job. Granada marked an important shift in the approach taken by Wolf Team when creating their games. Instead of starting out with the narrative and working to fit the mechanics of a game to that, the opposite approach was taken. Sure, the result means the narrative is a bit odd, especially in the translation from the original Japanese to what we got in the West, but for titles of this era, it certainly fits in regardless. The focus on the mechanics ensures that what is here plays really well. Though taking some inspiration from some arcade gems, particularly Namco's Grobda and Assault, Granada uses the ideas from them to create a unique enough experience for the time. And for sure, the Mega Drive would certainly get a number of classic shmups over its life, and famously 1990 was a year that was filled with them from third parties. Very few of them straight outside the classic mould of the vertical or horizontal shooter. So it offers a unique set of mechanics, a solid challenge, all of which makes it a game well worth experiencing, particularly if you're after something that bit different from your Mega Drive shooting game experience. Which brings us to the end of another video. I really hope you enjoyed this slice of 16-bit action. If you did, then do leave a thumbs up on the video, or perhaps tell your friends, as both of these help out the channel immensely. Subscribing, if you really enjoyed what's going on here, why not do that as well if you haven't already. But finally, and most importantly of all, thank you all so very much for taking another voyage beyond the Scanlines.